Sometimes when we do things that maybe increase the risk of heart problems, combined with a genetic predisposition, it's a time bomb basically waiting to happen. And that's what it seemed like was with Dallas.
So as most of you probably already know, Dallas McCarver died. His autopsy report was recently released. I did a video on it, and it's very clear that his steroid abuse caused him to have an enlarged heart and severe atherosclerosis. And heart disease caused by his steroid abuse is what killed him. I don't think any reasonable person could read his autopsy report and think that steroid abuse isn't what ultimately caused his death. He had a testosterone concentration that was 55 times higher than a healthy male at the high end of the spectrum, and given his insane testosterone score, a lot of people think that he was taking about 10 grams of gear per week. So it's no wonder he died at 26 years of age. He was just abusing drugs way too hard. Now, I happened across Dave Palumbo's video going over Dallas's autopsy, and to my surprise, Dave did not make one single mention of Dallas's steroid use, which is very peculiar, especially for him. Dave has talked about steroids many times in the past. He's an admitted steroid user. He competed as a bodybuilder, and it's pretty obvious the guy has a lot of personal experience with steroids. So why wouldn't he talk about how steroid use was linked to Dallas's death when he has all of this experience with steroids and he constantly talks about steroids on his YouTube channel? Well, I have a theory for why he did this, and keep in mind, this is purely speculation. I have no hard evidence, but I think Dave was either giving Dallas advice on how to take steroids, or he might have even been selling Dallas steroids. Dave even has videos on his channel going over when and how to take steroids, how to tell if your steroids are real, and even how to get steroids from Mexico. So it's not out of the question to think that Dave would have given Dallas advice when he's considered an industry expert and Dallas is still just a young guy who might want to learn from someone who has a lot of experience with this sort of thing. And Dave has used a hell of a lot of steroids himself. He obviously knows where to get them, and he probably has sold them to people before. Greg Valentino, who is well known in the fitness industry, who also has a lot of personal experience with steroid use and abuse himself, has stated that all bodybuilders have sold steroids at some point.
This is a bold statement now, that there's not a pro bodybuilder on this planet or a guy that takes steroids who hasn't sold steroids either. They may not be heavy-duty drug dealers, but I can't imagine any bodybuilder who trains in a gym who takes steroids, especially on a regular basis, who hasn't at least sold a bottle or two to his friends or to other guys in the gym. I started out very small with the steroid thing, and it just escalated, and as it escalated, you know, I got bigger, not just body-wise, but, you know, selling the steroids and in the business, in the drug dealing business, and we were big, you know, I was up there.
So this makes a lot of sense. A lot of these drugs can get pretty expensive, especially at high doses. Bodybuilding is an expensive sport that's very time consuming and very rarely ever pays the bills. So heavy steroid users like Dave Palumbo have, at least in the past, sold steroids and maybe some other drugs to earn some extra money. Well, guess what? Dave Palumbo was in fact jailed for 10 months for selling steroids, a type of growth hormone called Serostim specifically. And the funny thing is, Dave was supposedly unknowingly selling a fake counterfeit product that wasn't sterile. Yet he's made videos on how to tell whether or not your steroids are real. So either he doesn't know what he's talking about and he doesn't know himself how to tell if steroids are real or not, or he was intentionally selling a fake counterfeit product that wasn't sterile and dangerous. So it doesn't sound out of the realm of possibility that Dave could have been selling Dallas steroids, especially with all of his industry connections, and of course he works with a lot of steroid users. And at the very least, I think there's a good chance that Dave was giving Dallas advice on how to take them. And the problem there is that Dave doesn't know fuck all about steroids. The guy gives advice purely based on personal anecdotal experience rather than relying on science.
Let's go to Saul Martinez. Let's say I took anabolics at a young age for about 5 years on and off. Is there any chance of ever coming back to normal, or do I need TRT forever?
You know, I thought I needed TRT forever. And then I decided I wanted to have a baby. So I went off all the anabolics I was on, even my hormone replacement. And I took HCG and Clomid. And I got my wife pregnant. And I never went back on. And I've tested myself, and my testosterone is in the high sixes. High 600s, that is, not sixes. And I feel great. So I guess the old adage that if you take testosterone, it will suppress you permanently is not true. Now, in some people, it is. But I'm a big believer of a lot of people, when they hit 40 and they go get tested and they find out they have a testosterone of 150. I believe a lot of those people have had it their whole life already. And they just didn't know it. They had a low testosterone. They never got tested, because who the hell gets tested when you're young? You know, you get used to whatever your natural levels are. I probably had high levels my whole life. I was a decent natural bodybuilder. I put on some decent size. I always recovered well and stuff. So, you know, I think it's very genetically determined. So to answer your question, no, I don't believe you will permanently suppress yourself. Might it happen? It might happen, but I don't think it's a definitive.
So Dave just told someone that if they take steroids for a number of years, this will in no way harm their testicles, and their endocrine system will function normally once they come off. And he believes this just because that's what happened to him. Well, if we take a look at the research, a recent study was published in 2016, which followed 37 current steroid users, 33 former users, and 30 healthy control participants who had never taken steroids before. In this study, former steroid users had about 24% lower testosterone levels than subjects who had never used before. 27% of former users had exhibited total testosterone levels below the lower reference limit of 12.1 nanomoles per liter, which translates to 348 nanograms per deciliter, which is very low. And on top of that, former steroid users had higher instances of depressive symptoms, erectile dysfunction, and decreased libido. Accumulated duration of steroid use among former users was also associated with smaller testicle size. Also, keep in mind, those who were former users had been off steroids for an average of 2.5 years, ranging from 1.7 to 3.7 years. So steroids do often cause long-lasting and permanent damage to a man's testicles, and the longer you're using steroids, the greater the damage that will be done. And this can severely impact your quality of life, causing depression, erectile dysfunction. But here's Dave saying, yeah, I took them, and afterwards I was fine. So, if you want to take steroids, you shouldn't even worry about it, because I came off of them and I was perfectly fine. Dave Palumbo is a fucking moron who doesn't know anything about these drugs, yet he's giving people advice on how to take them, where to get them, how to tell if they're real when he can't even do any of this himself. And his advice is scientifically, categorically incorrect. This is starting to paint a very clear picture. Dave is a moron who doesn't know anything about steroids, yet he's considered very knowledgeable on the subject. Maybe Dallas figured he'd take advice from Dave. Dave would of course give Dallas horrible advice because he doesn't know what he's talking about. Maybe he told Dallas that he should take 10 grams of gear per week. It's not like Dave knows anything about these drugs and how to take them safely. And then, what do you know, Dallas wound up dead. And what would make this even more fucked up is that maybe Dave sold Dallas these drugs. Maybe Dave had a financial incentive to tell Dallas to take more steroids than he needed to, because then he could sell him more drugs and make more money. Maybe Dave figured, what are the chances of these drugs killing Dallas? He's only 26 years old. There's no way he could get heart disease and die at such a young age. I mean, Boston Lloyd looks perfectly fine. I've taken plenty of drugs, and look at me, I'm perfectly fine. Again, this is purely speculation. We can't know what actually happened for sure, but the guy has sold illegal drugs in the past. Do you think he'd suddenly have a huge personality change just because he spent 10 months in jail? The guy used to make a living selling harmful illegal drugs. He's a dishonest crook. Do you honestly think he gave a shit about Dallas's well-being? Do you think if he had an opportunity to take advantage of a young man like Dallas and sell him drugs to make money off of him, He wouldn't do it? Do you think Dave wouldn't have at least given Dallas advice on how to take these steroids? And then, whoa, look at that. Here's Dave making a video about Dallas's autopsy, just taking another opportunity to make money off of Dallas. I'll link Dave's video in the description down below, and I suggest you go watch because not only will it give you context, but it really is disgusting. Nowhere does he mention anything about Dallas's steroid use, and you have to ask yourself, what stake does Dave Palumbo have in this, where he'd intentionally lie to his audience about what caused Dallas's death? Why couldn't he just mention once that Dallas was taking way too much steroids and that's what ultimately killed him? Like, what's his motive here? Why isn't he telling his audience the truth? Does he have something to hide? Does he perhaps want to hide that he was giving Dallas terrible advice or even selling him illegal drugs? Dave's been busted before, and I'm sure he doesn't want to go back to prison, so maybe he is hiding something. And this is only part 1 of 2. I will respond to Dave's actual video where he goes over Dallas's autopsy report, so stay tuned for that. I just wanted to dedicate one video specifically to the possibility that Dave might have played a role in Dallas's death. The guy is absolute cancer, he's a liar and a fraud, and he's encouraging steroid use and spreading harmful misinformation. And before I go, just a warning, Dave might try to get this video taken down. There's a good chance he'll file a copyright claim or something. So I would appreciate it if you people would re-upload this video to your own channels. I don't even care if you monetize it. I just want to make sure this video stays up on the internet. And as always, keep making those vegan and natural gains.